Welcome, everybody. This is something new for us. We are going to launch a official labeled podcast. It's kind of exciting, kind of scary. We don't really know which direction we're going to go in, but we kind of have a baseline outline to kind of bring you guys into our world a little bit more, get to know some of the personalities, some of the stuff that we do here at Label, and just kind of share our experiences with you. Hopefully you guys find it interesting. If not, we get it. You got to tune out.
Right, exactly.
So obviously you guys, if you follow us or if you're familiar with us at all, you recognize me from the videos. My name's Andy. I own Label Motorsports, and I'll tell you a little bit about me after we get through some introductions. But we've got two guys with us today that I want you guys to be introduced to too, so I'll let you start first.
I'm Justin. I do the paint protection film, vinyl wrapping, as well as obviously give a hand with everything else around here. And yeah, this is Evan right next to me.
I'm Evan. I'm the media guy, photography and videography.
Perfect.
Nice.
And you do a little bit of everything else for us, right?
Pretty much,
We
yeah.
need you to grab some tape. You'll grab some tape.
Errand boy.
Not an errand boy. You know, the biggest, I think, fallacy people have to the industry that we're in is that, you know, if you see some of the polished content and some of the stuff that we do here, people think like, you know, there's a big group of people behind it. And in some cases there is. But for us, there isn't. Really what you see right here today is the guys that are here most of the time. Some of you guys may have recognized Mark. Mark was a technician that'd come in and give us a hand here and there on some projects. They had their second baby, and obviously life changes and kind of pulled him away from the shop. But he's slowly been coming back, and we've been seeing him more. So hopefully we can wrangle him in here a little bit more in the future. And then we've also had some other people help us in the past, you know, here and there. I know Dylan has come in a couple times, given us some hands with some things, and his brother. So, you know, we're very fortunate to have a supportive team around us that allows us to do what we can do. But also sees the vision and kind of supports us when we need a hand.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I wanted to do, and probably today's going to be a bunch of me talking and passing it off to the guys here and there, but we want to bring everybody up to speed on kind of where Label Motorsports started. I think that's a question we get, you know, especially out at events. Like people will ask, you know, what's the name come from, and you know, what do you guys actually do?
Yep, exactly.
Right.
And I think I'll ask you first, Justin. What did you think Label meant when you came in and you saw it for the first time, and you know, you heard me explain what I do? But from the standpoint, and maybe let's rewind a little bit more. When you and I first met, why don't you tell people what you were doing before we started working together officially?
Yeah, so before, well, right as Andy and I met, I had my own shop on the south side of town, doing wraps and paint protection film. And yeah, Andy approached me to work on, it was actually the Camaro was our first project together. So to work on the widebody Camaro. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that car, but yeah, it was a pretty special car back in the day. So I was pretty honored to be able to work on that and wrap it. So that was the first project I undertook with him. And after that, we started discussing, you know, plans to maybe potentially work together. But my whole idea of Label, it was very interesting to me because the only stuff I've seen like exotic European based was always down in Florida. And so nothing like in Grand Rapids, let alone Michigan or the Midwest, there's nothing really around that, you know, is what Label is. So that was hard for me to understand kind of what the whole vision of the business was, and because it's like most of the shops around are dedicated. They're either like a service facility or like a wrap shop. It's not like a whole, you know, one company that does everything and then just directed towards modifications. It's not, you know, not service based, not anything like that. So it was hard for me to like, how is this going to work? Like, we're in West Michigan, you know what I mean? It's like, how is this going to work just to modify European and exotic cars in West Michigan? But then we started working through some of these projects, and I started to see like the vision come to life of like the dedication that it takes to build a wide body, what it takes to, you know, get certain wheels on a car, suspension, all that stuff. And like, that was very interesting to me because I was very new to the whole wide body, you know, custom. I was just doing, you know, aesthetic stuff basically. So to see all that stuff come together was really interesting. And then obviously the more and more cars that you started to put out, it just kind of put the stamp of approval. The more and more, you know, you got devoted into West Michigan and you'd see cars on the street and at events and stuff like that. So yeah, it was, at first I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I mean, that's kind of what everybody thought, because it's like, we're just in West Michigan. But yeah, after, it took only a couple years to really solidify yourself in West Michigan, and then we started to really work together quite a bit.
Yeah. And that was, that's kind of what this podcast is to do, is to form a little bit of a history on, all of us, our background, what we've done. And for those of you guys that don't know, I ended up over here because my fiance was from Grand Rapids. I was on the east side. I was partners in I was a managing partner of a big hot rod shop. I had basically designed and built the entire showroom facility, hired all the staff. We were building chassis, fiberglass bodies, but it was a full service hot rod shop. And I've been in different capacities throughout all the years. So, and we'll get into a little bit of my history, to give some people some background on that as well. But when I first started coming over here, when I met Christina, I would come over on the weekends, and it was 2.5 hours, and she was living down in Granville at the time. And, I grew up going to Woodward. There's just automotive, kind of blisses around you at all times on the east side. People would have 3 or 4 cars, but live in a very modest house, because cars to them was life. It was passion. It was a hobby. It's something that they prioritized. And when I came over here, I'm like, Christina, where are people hanging out with the cars? Like, where are cars?
The only spot was Sonic.
Yeah, exactly. And that was over in Granville. So when I got off her exit to go to, her house, I remember one night we were going down there, and I'm like, what is going on here? There was 300-400 cars, a lot of European JDM, but a lot of beat up stuff, a couple decent cars. Yeah. And there was just a couple other, maybe some American muscle, some trucks, stuff like that, but nothing formal, nothing like what I was used to. And not that, you have to have a particular car, brand, or whatever to make it a worthwhile event. It just was very, I'll say, disjointed. Yep. When you go to Detroit, you can pull up to some place that has, and this, we're talking about on Thursday night. Right. There's no event planned, but you could go someplace and there's 500 cars, 600 cars, and there's everything from pro mods, full drag cars on the street that shouldn't even be on the street, to classic one-off show cars, to exotics. You'll see a Carrera GT, you'll see an Enzo, and it's just everybody's talking, everybody's hanging out. It's not very cliquey. Of course, you got your groups of people that get together, but there the focus was around we just love to see the cars. We love to be around the cars. It's hard to explain to somebody that hasn't been kind of in that society, I'd call it. Yep. To explain how that feels to go around other people that we could be from different backgrounds, but we're all here because cars. Because of cars. Yeah, yep. We love cars. So when I came here and I said to Christine, I'm like, there's got to be people with cars, because it's the second largest city in Michigan. There's obviously people with money here. I know there's a passion for cars, but what are they doing with them? Yep. And I couldn't figure it out. Talked to a lot of people, met some guys when I first came over, and they kind of told me that there isn't a lot going on, and that's how I started Cars and Coffee Grand Rapids. So if you guys aren't familiar, Cars and Coffee Grand Rapids is, I would probably say, the exclusive Cars and Coffee event here now in West Michigan. We do them at the downtown market, partnered with the city of Grand Rapids, DGRI, Gentex. We have a ton of really cool partners that allow us to put on a special event. But literally how I started that was I came over, I think it would be on a Friday night. Saturday, we would go out and have brunch or breakfast, and I would say, hey, I'm going to drive around the city. I bought the website, bought the domain, and made these business cards, really nice business cards, but it was a silhouette of a Lamborghini. Put my name on it, the website, and on the back it had next event, time, and then a little note that I would handwrite. And it seems really dumb, even talking about it now, but then I was very excited about it because I thought it would work. Mm-hmm. And I drove to the country clubs, I drove out to neighborhoods, I drove out to the mall, and I literally wrote great looking Porsche 991 Turbo.
Yeah, just stick it in.
Yeah, and I said, hey, our next event is so-and-so, and jump on the website, shoot me a message, if you're interested. And I just lightly stuck it in their window, and people started to either call, jump on the website, and it gained steam that way. So the first event that we had, I think we had 40 or 50 cars. Okay. But we had, some Porsches, we had some Mustangs, we had some Camaros. I think we had one Ferrari, Audis, BMW. But at that time, that was a big deal.
Yep. Yeah.
You know what I mean? For any of those cars to come together in one location, it was a big deal. And so it slowly grew from there, and I started to make connections and meet people, and people kind of put two and two together and found out that I was building cars on the east side of the state. And I started to get the question, hey, are you going to ever open a shop over here? And at that time I was like, no, probably not. I'm just coming over here. I want to create some, hangout network event.
Yep. So Cars and Coffee started before Label.
Oh yeah, way before Label. Yep. Yeah, years before Label.
Before, okay.
Yeah. Because actually Christina and I were together 2.5 years before I actually came over here full time.
Okay.
So I was coming over on the weekend. I was hosting the events, doing the events, going back home on Monday morning, working all week, like 60 hours in the shop, coming back late Friday night, and just doing that every weekend. And until I started to build a network of people that I was like, okay, now we have a great following. And when I say great, again, I'm talking 50 to 70 cars.
In comparison to now, it's nothing.
Correct.
But
Right.
I remember those first few events.
Yeah.
You go there and you're like, holy cow, there's a Ferrari and a Lambo sitting in one parking lot. I'm like, I've only seen that down in Florida.
Right. And it was a big deal, right?
yeah.
Like people came out with cameras. There were younger photographers, videographers. Frankie LaPena, that's where I first met Frankie. If you guys don't know Frankie, you can just do a quick Google search and you'll see Frankie all over the internet, a big YouTube influencer. But he came out to the event and he shot some videos and some drone stuff, and it really looks cool, and then I met a couple other guys that shot stuff for us, and they were just getting started out in photography. So we kind of had this agreement where, you shoot photos and I'll share them and promote your work. And this gives you the experience to shoot cars that we don't normally see.
Right.
So it was, again, a lot of things aligning to allow us to start what I thought was an interesting event, right? Mm-hmm. And once I think we got past the first year, I started going to the downtown market, and this was the year after it had first opened.
So there was only 1 year at Bella Bay?
Yeah, well, no, 2 years.
Okay.
So the second year I went to the downtown market, and that's when I brought the idea of bringing Cars and Coffee there. And when they started to entertain it, we had limited days, right? So we could only do, I think, 2 or 3 events that first year.
Okay.
So we did 1 or 2 at Bella Bay, and then we went to
Yep.
the downtown market until we got to the point, year 3, where we went down to the downtown market exclusively.
Okay.
And again, that all stemmed from the networking, the meeting people, and then putting on a great event, keeping up with our media, showing people what we do, and organizing it the right way. And we got a ton of hate the first year.
Well,
2 years, I think.
I don't know if I ever told you this story, but back when you started that, so I registered. I had a M50 swapped E30. It had kind of everything on it, and I entered that Cars and Coffee, and you declined me.
Ooh.
And that was back when you were saying, now we approve everybody, but that was when you're saying yes or no. And at first I'm like, dude, what the heck? How am I not going to be included in this? But I didn't realize the vision that you had for that event, and you're trying to structure it more towards that higher end, market at the time, and having limited spaces. Like being involved now, I completely understand it, but it was funny back then. I was super mad at you. I'm like, dude, what the heck? It was before we even worked together. But I was like, what the heck, dude? I've got this built car, and you're not even letting me in.
Right. And the problem that I had is we were in such a limited space, right? I think we had 70 spots total.
Okay.
And we're operating in Caledonia, where there isn't, we're not going to have a presence or security or anything like that. And me being to other Cars and Coffee throughout the country, I've seen bad things happen, right? Yep. So it never stemmed from hey, I need to only have these cars, otherwise I'm not doing it. It stemmed from a couple of reasons. The first was I want to create a draw for the public to come to, right? So us hanging out in the parking lot with all of our cars and whatever, that's what we did in Detroit. That wasn't a public event. Mm-hmm. What I was trying to start was a public community event. It was focused around the cars, but it encouraged people to bring their family, their kids out, see things that they normally wouldn't see. I didn't have a car for 2 years. I didn't even have my own personal car in an event. So for me, I'm well, dude, it's my event. I should have a car in here, but I just didn't have anything. So that was one of the things that I would say was a big hurdle to get over, because the conception or the perception of what I was doing here was, I'm trying to be, cool, or I'm trying to promote myself by doing events with specific cars. Yep. And that was never the case.
Yeah. So that was 8 years ago?
Going on 8 this year.
And going into it, you had no vision of Label. You didn't have a plan of starting Cars and Coffee and getting a group of people together, and then starting a business off that. That's what I think people don't realize.
Right. Never. No, Label. I didn't even think about Label.
That's interesting.
And when we get to that point, I'll explain the story how Label got started. But Label was something that I would have never opened in Michigan, to be honest with you. What I have right here never would have been open in Michigan. It would have been if I returned down to Florida or went down to Texas, where I used to live and stuff like that. Yep. That's where my vision always was for a shop like this. So that's what's really ironic about it, is that we're here in Grand Rapids, right? And it would have been like the last place I would have ever chosen to land. But it's one of those things, like it truly organically came out of opportunity, what our life circumstances presented, Christina and I, and what we were willing to risk to try to start it, which I think that's an important part of the story that I want people to know, that this was certainly not something that was started with a big budget. It was not started with business. It was not started with somebody walking in and cutting me a check. It was literally started just me saying, I'm going to, with my own cash, open up this small little building with no customers.
Build it out yourself.
And say, all right, if somebody shows up, cool. If not, I guess I got my own garage for a year, because I leased the building for a year. But it was one of those things that I was like, I'm just going to trust myself and go with it,
It's not an easy feeling. I mean, that's
the worst.
Yeah, it's not good. It's like when you start getting those monthly, rent requests or whatever they call it, and you're like, I don't have that money in 30 days.
Right.
Like, what am I going to do?
Right.
And that's not a good feeling, but that also puts you in a position to, grind and do things that you don't want to do just to make sure that works.
Yeah. And Evan, this was back, when you were still just a wee little lad, probably right?
Not even into cars yet, I don't think.
No.
You're right.
He's 10 years old.
He was in elementary school or something.
I think this is a cool story for also Evan to hear, because Evan hasn't heard the whole progression of how it got started and everything like that. So you're learning as everybody else is learning. Yeah. But so as Cars and Coffee started to take off, we started to get a really good following, people traveling from out of area, and then we started to get manufacturers reaching out to me. So I remember in the third year, Lexus reached out to me and they said, hey, love what you're doing. Really interested to see if we can participate. And I was like, of course. And they were like, well, what are you thinking? I'm like, well, it'd be awesome if we had a car that you either are getting ready to produce or something that's in the works that you guys would come out and share. And they were like, I think we have something. And do you remember the is it the LFC? So it's the two-door coupe, the bigger one. Not the LFA.
RCF?
No.
The LC 500 or something?
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. So it's the two-door coupe. It's wide, kind of bigger, but it was like a performance coupe. And this was the prototype version. So this would have been, I don't know, 2017. I think that car didn't come out till like 2020 or 2019 or something like that. But I remember it was like a year or a year and a half ahead of its time. And they brought a Lexus transport truck. Brought the car out in a representative, and they're all black because that's what they wear. And they parked the car in the center of the event, and people came and saw the car for the first time.
And this was at the market?
No, this was at Bella Bay still.
I didn't go to that one.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
I probably have pictures of it. We could share at one point. But that was something that really got my mind going. And how I work is I think about, like, how can we do something different? How can we do something that's not traditional marketing? Like, obviously, this is marketing and advertisement, but it's not that here's my business card.
Exactly.
It's not here's a commercial. This is like you have something interesting, you bring people into it, and it's not generating money. That's not what it was for. It was to generate the community involvement. Money will take care of itself. That's what I always say. That's what I say about Label. That's what I say about it. Anything that we do with sponsors is that build something interesting, put your effort and time into something interesting, the money will follow. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you to follow up with that, 100%. Grind it out. And if it's something you really want to do, you'll probably figure it out, right? And that's what our business is really divided into two sections. I think it's the businesses that want to support, see the vision and work to completion. And then it's the guys that want to talk about it, the guys that want to get their picture by it. They want the publicity, but they don't want to put in the time, effort, money, the grind, whatever it takes to get there. And that's really where some of the relationships have went to the side for us, both with Cars and Coffee in here, and also with any of the actual car stuff, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a parts supplier, whether it's a media person, whoever comes into this world, you kind of have to adapt to what we do. Yep. Not because we're saying it's right, but because what works for us, what works for us. So in order to be in this team, You have to be able to function under those circumstances. Everybody's a little different, right? There's going to be a little different with Evan, a little different with you, Justin, a little different with me.
Yep.
But we all kind of have to have that same focus on what the final goal is, right? So going to SEMA is a good example recently with Evan is that, hey, Evan, here's what we've done in the past. Here's what we want to do. This is what you got to work towards. Do we expect you to hit it perfectly? No, but we expect you to manage your time, efforts, equipment, everything to kind of achieve that goal.
Yep.
And that's really what Cars and Coffee had turned into. So by the time we got to year 4, year 5, it was an entity on its own. It was people looked forward to it, you know. The only money I really spent building that was I would promote our events once in a while, 30 days prior to the event on Facebook, right? So people saw it. And it was one of those things that people got used to seeing, and they're like, heck yeah, I'm going to it.
And that was before sponsorships were involved?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Really, the only sponsorships at that time were people offering us space, right? So the market would give us the space to do things in their environment, and it brought business to them. And what we liked about that was it allowed us to have a really cool venue to put on an event.
Yeah.
So that's really, you know, kind of how I got started in getting to know people around here and finding out if there is, you know, guys that are into cars, and that led to friendships and a lot of great things that happened from there. And if anything, the way I looked at that was if I'm going to ever come to Grand Rapids, to know people would be helpful, right? If I'm getting into real estate, if I'm getting into...
No matter what you're doing.
If I'm going to work into some business, I got to maybe know somebody, right? And at least get that opportunity to get in front of someone and get a job if that's, you know, the path that I go down. So, you know, Cars and Coffee was really incremental in making me feel more comfortable here and feeling like there's an automotive community that I was looking for when I came over.
So how many years did you do Cars and Coffee before Label started?
That would have been, so Label started, what are we going on, our 5th year? Right? So 2018.
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 complete years until I actually opened Label. And then I didn't even, when I opened Label, I think it was 6 months before I even told anybody. Because the way that my mind is I want, you know, it's kind of like setting up what we're doing. If we may have limited resources, but I want to do the best that I can do at that time. So I had a customer that was interested in building a car with me, which was the widebody M5. You can see it on the website. Him and I talked for quite a bit, and it kind of went down the path of, I'd like to maybe have you do something. You know, what do you recommend? And let me not get all the way into when Label started, because how Label got started was a little different. Label got started in a conversation between Christina and I. Christina had just opened her first Siren and Proper location downtown a year prior to us meeting.
And that was her very first location.
Yeah.
So you guys
her
are kind
very
of doing
first
it at
business.
The same time.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
She was 26, you know, and she'll be the first to tell you. She doesn't have a lot of business experience. She all learned on the fly, you know, which I really admire. It's one of those things that unless you go through it, you really don't know. You know, you learned the same way. Evan's learning a little bit the same way, but you know, we didn't go down the traditional path of starting your business. We went through the path of learning and making mistakes and doing what we have to do. And it was probably a year into our relationship, and my plan was to have her come to the east side. Let this run, open up a location, you know, over on the east side. I got a big shop, you know. I'm also in commercial real estate development with some partners. So I have a lot going on. I just bought a house, doing a big remodel on it. I was getting close to finishing that. So I essentially had a life set up over there. And when I first sat down and talked to Christina about it, she hesitated. And Bay City was smaller at the time. That's where her shop would be if she opened another one. But my family was from there. I felt like we had a good support system. I had a great house there. You know, a lot of things that we could comfortably move into life, settle in, and, you know, no worries. Really just she could open the business at her leisure. It would be successful because there was no competition at the time. I had money coming in from different sources. So, you know, I could support her any way that she wanted coming over. And it was like that pillow of comfort that you're like, hey, come over. We'll figure it out. You know, there's not much to worry about. And we had talked about it a couple times, and I could see in her eyes she was kind of deflated with it. Like she didn't want to say it, but she was she was second guessing like moving to the east side. So as we sat down and talked about, different circumstances, I had just made the decision. I didn't ask her. I just said, you know what? I'm in a situation now that I'm not completely happy in with the shop, my partners. I feel like they're somewhat taking advantage of the situation. And I said, I'm going to sell everything here. I'm going to come to the west side of the state. I'd moved all over the country. My whole life I've picked up and left and figured it out on my own. And I had no fear of saying, you know what, I have a great run here. I have a great chapter. I will get rid of some stuff. I will bank some money and I'll come over there and we'll start a life. Because what weighed on my mind was if I took this away from her and made it about me, I'm 10 years older than Christina. So I looked back at me in her stage of life, and I would have said, if somebody came into my life and disrupted it that way, I don't know that I would be able to manage that well. And we go to the east side, something happens, she resents me for that, and she changes her life at a young age that I don't want to be responsible for. So I just made the decision. I said, here's the deal. I'm gonna get out of everything that I'm in, and I'm going to come over there and we're going to start a life together and we'll figure it out. And she, of course, said, no, don't do that. She loved the house. She loved being around my family. She liked the area. Her only internal struggle was obviously, she started something that was her baby, her dream, and now she's having to step away from that. And not that she was getting rid of it, but she's having to start another one in a smaller market, and it doesn't have, like the wow factor. It'd be like me opening a shop in Miami or opening a shop here in Grand Rapids. Yep. Now, they may be totally different. They may have the same customers and stuff, but Miami's just a little more sexy, right? And you're going to be like, oh, man, I don't know if I would rather go to Grand Rapids in the winter or I'd rather be here on South Beach.
Exactly.
So playing through that all through my own head, I just decided that was what we were going to do. Now, I didn't know what that path was going to lead to, but it was a long, bumpy, insane path, when we look back at it. But I ended up selling the house, banked everything. It was sad. I was sad because I had felt like I had redesigned this entire house, did almost all of the work myself. It was like, my dream house. Bought it as a expensive foreclosure back in the day, and took me like a year and a half to complete it. And here I was selling it, and moving on. Yeah, and I made money, but I was emotionally attached to that because I had seen my life starting, kind of in that home. But at the end of the day, I've had to sell things, get rid of things, move. Again, it's just another material item, and it was moving my focus to something else at that time. So fast forward, we come over here. Christina has an opportunity to buy the house that she's in, and it's one of those Granville houses, new house, new construction, no trees in the subdivision, but I don't like any of those houses. They're
like the builder spec homes.
Yeah, they're like cookie cutter. Right. Your neighbors are all around you. It had a pool and it was great, but the owners wanted way too much money for it. And I told Christina, it's not worth it. And I have a real estate license. I was doing real estate too on the east side. And I was like, let's just get rid of this place and we'll figure out where you and I can go together. Plus, we didn't like driving in on 131. For those of you guys that aren't from over here, you don't want to be driving over here. I'm constantly road raging. They don't have any highway bigger than 3 lanes here. And I'll tell you what, 3 lanes and people driving in the left lane 5 miles an hour under the speed limit nonstop.
Yeah.
Yep.
We got merge lanes in the fast lane here in West Michigan. We got people that they merge into the on-ramp traffic. Every day I go home, the on-ramp's coming down. This guy is merging across the double white lines into my merge lane onto the. I don't know where these people come from. I need to have like a display board where I can write custom messages on it in the front and back. I don't know if that's legal, but we're looking into figuring out how to do that. But it is a debacle, and I only live 7 minutes from here. So if I drove 30 minutes, I'd definitely be in jail.
We would not be doing this.
No, not at all. I'm out of here, pal. But anyway, so we did that, and a lot of people don't know this part of our story. We decided to pick up shop, and we moved back down to Schoolcraft, where Christina's family is from, and we moved into her parents' house. and we lived in her childhood bedroom. I didn't have a place to move to because I had sold my home. Yep. Christina got out of that house, and her parents were gracious enough to let us, come stay with them as we figured things out. The housing market here has been insane forever. Yep. So we couldn't just go out and buy something that was suitable for us. We didn't want to spend that money. And we decided that we would do that. So Schoolcraft, if you guys don't know, is an hour south of Grand Rapids. Christina worked 6 days a week. I had no job at the time, just doing the cars and coffee stuff in the summer. In the winter, I did some building things. Like I helped Christina's parents do their kitchen and stuff because I had obviously a lot of experience doing that. But that was just to take up time. But in all that other time, I was building what I was going to do. At that time, Label was a small thought in my mind.
Okay.
Christina had come to me and said, listen, what do you want to do when you come over here? And I'm like, I don't know. Real estate's easy for me. I have a good friend that's in real estate here. He's one of the top realtors in the area. I had met with him a few times, and he was like, dude, you'd come over here and kill it. You don't even have to worry about it. And I was confident that I love real estate. Real estate's fun. And I would probably end up going back and doing that at some point as I got older. But Christina was like, and she had come to Autorama. She had seen me at the shows. Okay. She'd come over to the other shop. So she knows the creative, like the car side of me. And Christina has passion in cars. She grew up with DSMs. She was in the Eagle Talons and Eclipses and stuff like that. So she was definitely a tuner back in the day and had her own car. And I think that was a part that was missing from her life now, is that she wasn't with anybody that was into cars. And when she met me, I think that was one of the attractions, like, oh, he's into cars too. That's kind of cool.
That's sweet.
So, we kind of bonded over that. And she was like, listen, I see everything that you're doing. I hear your stories. I know what you've done. You should just go into cars. I mean, you can do real estate whenever, wherever. Right. Who cares about that? And I'm like, yeah, but cars is a complete grind. Like, we're not going to make any money. If I'm going to go do this, we're essentially saying we're going to put our life on pause and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, we're going to pick up where we are currently, right?
So that could be 5 years down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're going to go back to this conversation we're having right now. All right, now what do we do? And we had talked about that quite a bit. And she was like, no, I'm willing to put my life on hold and help support you get to where you need to be. So that meant, if it's living expenses, costs, food, travel, extra money that we didn't have, she was willing to help support for us doing things together. We still had all of our own bills. I took care of my cars, insurances, all that stuff. But if there was like dinners and things that we did, she picked up, where I would normally be able to put in. And, for a man, that's a hard step to take. Of course, together, we're not married at this time, obviously. So, we just have an agreement together that, hey, we're going to chase this together.
Yeah.
So as a man, it was hard for me to not always, because I was always the one like, hey, we're going to go here. I'm getting this. We're staying at the Mandarin Oriental. We're going to go shopping. I'm spending all kinds of money because I have this weird balance of like, I want to enjoy some things, but I'm also going to save some money. So, people will be like, well, you buy an expensive pair of shoes, but your house isn't complete. Well, because I'm not willing to sacrifice everything luxury-wise that I want to have. I would rather slowly do everything at my pace. That's what drives me. Everybody's different. Yep. Some people live beyond their means. I did that when I was younger. Now I have a great balance of feeling like, hey, I know when I can spend some money and know when I should hold on to some money. And if it's not hurting us, then we're perfectly fine. So, that's kind of the space that we've lived in. So we stayed with Christina's parents for over a year.
Oh, I didn't know it was that long.
And drove every day up here.
1 hour.
I drove Christina to work, dropped her off, and I sat in a cafe across the street from her salon called My and Buzz, and used their internet. And all I did is brainstorm. That's all I did every day. So probably 50 hours a week, I was in this coffee shop in one chair, and they got to know me, obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm emailing people, right? I'm trying to set up meetings. I'm just trying to be creative. I think about like, what could I do? What would be interesting? You know, with tools that I have, the resources that I have, what could I do?
And that's for this, or are you just kind of generalizing?
That's
Just like
straight
what can I
general.
do?
Yeah, I'm thinking about a car shop
Okay.
because people have been asking me, and I know Cars and Coffee is jumping off. You know, there's some things happening, but there's nothing that's saying like, hey, Andy, here's some money and some cars. Can you go do this for me? Just go get a space and do it. And to be honest, that's the way a lot of those shops start. Like they'll have a customer that's like, listen, I'll fund your space. You're going to have the first couple cars. Just go out and do it, you know. Or they have money guys that are like, you know, cars are cool. Here's $1 million. Go build a shop. And that's what's strange. At that time, I had guys in my back pocket that were like, hey, man, you want to start a shop in Grand Rapids? Let's do it. I've got $1 million. I got $2 million. We'll be 50-50 partners. And because of my fallout with my partners on the east side, stuff that's happened down in Florida, I was like, absolutely not.
Yep.
Now, that is a easy, you know, my whole life I was chasing that paycheck. And in those situations, I made over 6 figures all the time, you know, for running the shop, for designing, all of that stuff, some sales-based, some salary-based. And every time, my money partners were the ones that knew nothing about the business. They don't even know who to contact. They don't know how to hire the people.
So crazy.
And they had these meetings where they come in and say, hey, you're making too much money.
Right.
Yeah. That's crazy. Hey, you're making too much money. Well, I don't know. I guess in my world, if we're making money that I'm making more money on, I think that's good for the business, right?
Yeah,
you don't want me making minimum. I mean, I just don't get that. And it was always a sit-down conversation and said, hey, we got to reduce your pay or we got to slow this down a little bit. And I'm like, no, that's not how I work. Right. And they're like, no, that's how you're going to work. And I was just getting tired of that being forced down my throat. So that's where the sacrifices come in to say, all right, I'm not going to have a fancy building. I'm not going to have marketing. I'm not going to have a bunch of cars or the best equipment or whatever. Literally, I'm going to have to go out and do this on my own. So that's where the conversation with Christina was like, listen, if I'm going to do this, it's going to take all my money, you know, and we got to be able to function for a year or 2 years with nobody coming in. So again, not being cash strapped, which is really important in starting a business, but being able to go out and fund and stay targeted in what you want to do.
Yeah.
And when we made the determination that we're going to start Label, that's what it was. It was, I'm going to fit the shop that I know it can be functional. It's going to be 2,000 square feet. It's going to be a brand new building, which is a benefit. So I can kind of do it the way that I want. But I had to build the office. I had to paint the walls. I had to do framing. I had to do the electrical. There were no subcontractors. It was me by myself in this, you know, warehouse up here. But nobody sees that, right? Like I spent 3 months doing all of that by myself. I could have used a second hand to lift rafters up to the 10-foot ceilings, you know, like, and I'm in here trying to just figure it out. You know, I'd fallen, I'd hurt myself a few times, and I'm like, I just have to figure this out. So it took all that time for me to open it up, and the plan was that I can fund everything in here. It's not going to hurt us in any other way other than we just won't have the expendable income that we would normally have because I spent it on outfitting the shop. Mm-hmm. And what I thought I would do is through all of this time sitting at the coffee shop for that year, figuring things out, talking to people, I had talked to a couple guys that wanted to invest, guys that I trusted, guys that were friends. And when I mean invest, they weren't coming in and saying, here's a check, I'm, you know, your 50-50 partner. They come in as a smaller investor, right? So they come in and they have one guy was an engineer. He understood CAD. He understood mechanic. He was mechanical on a car, so he knew how to work on cars. So to me, that was more of kind of similar, like a relationship you and I have, is that he has something to offer to the business, right? He's not a money guy coming in that doesn't know anything about the business. Mm-hmm. And that's what I always said. Like, I'm not going to get back into business with anybody that isn't grinding, you know what I mean, or doesn't understand what the car industry is. And so he came in and we went through all of these different circumstances, and it was probably a couple months of talking. Trustworthy guy, Christina trusted him. And I'll never forget this. We sit down, and I've had this happen lots of times. And I think he had his wife with him, and he's like, yeah, we looked over everything. And before this, let me preface this. They're like, yeah, we're all in. This is a freaking home run idea. It's awesome. Right. You know, you got an awesome background. Cars and Coffee is awesome. So
this is at the very beginning.
This is at the very beginning.
No cars in the doors.
Yeah, this is before actually I start building.
Okay.
So we're friends through all of this, and he knows what I'm working on. You know, so we've hung out and stuff like that. Yep. And they sit down to me and they're dead ass serious. And they say, yeah, we just don't see it. I don't understand how this is going to work. And I'm literally sitting there looking at them like, what do you mean? Like, I've explained how this is going to work. Yeah, but how are you going to get paid back? How are you going to make money on jobs? And I said, well, first of all, customers have to show up, and then it's my responsibility to either educate them, show them what we do, gain their confidence, deliver, whatever that is, that's me, right? Yep. Well, that doesn't make sense. Like, what's the product? I said, well, the product is me in the shop and what we're going to be doing. No, that doesn't make sense. You're not actually selling. Like, how do you make money on the part?
That's crazy.
And here I was sitting, and immediately, this is what goes off in my head. I'm like, here I am trying to prove myself to somebody that I don't need to prove myself to because I don't need them, right? It's just a benefit. It makes it easier. Again, I'm chasing a check, right? Yeah. So why did I have partners in the past? I was chasing a check. Somebody wrote me a check. And in this situation, it was a relationship I'm chasing. So now I'm trying to get that relationship check. And I'm sitting there saying, no, this is not what I'm doing. And I said, you know what? We're cool. Yep. No worries, man. Yep. We're good. Right. And you know what happened? He came back to me. He was offended. He thought I was being selfish and told me I was selfish. And I just sat there and I was like, all right, sorry about that, man. And I apologized. And I was like, hey, I'm just going about my business at that point. And at that time, I knew that was it. I'm not talking to anybody else. It's going to be my way. I don't care. If somebody comes and tells me it's not my way, see ya. You can tell me, you can say anything you want about me, but you're not going to tell me the way that I'm going to do it. And that's the thing that's hard to get through these days is like people take that stuff personal. You know, 100%. They take that stuff personal. Yep. Even today, like if you go in and you hold somebody accountable, and I tell everybody up front, I'm trying to be, and I'm not perfect. Trust me, I'm not perfect. But when I walk in, I say, dude, this is what I expect. This is what you do. Is this possible to do? Yep. Right? And I ask you that question.
You say either yes or no.
Yeah, yes or no. You say, yeah, man, definitely.
That's it.
Cool.
Yep, you got it.
Mm-hmm. And then when you come back and you're like, hey, something happened here. You know, this isn't quite right. Instead of saying, well, show me. You know, let's see what's wrong. What can we do different? Or let me explain to you why this didn't turn out. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about? Why are you being a jerk? You know, why are you attacking me? Hold on. Dude, nobody's attacking you. I'm just asking, you know, we were trying to get this done. This is what happened. Why did it turn out like this? And immediately, instead of resolution, instead of, you know, like talking through what the issue actually was or telling us, explaining to me maybe why something couldn't be. You know, sometimes I'll have maybe an expectation that's unrealistic given the circumstances. So maybe I provided something to you that was wrong. Tell me how I can change that in the future so we can get the outcome that we originally talked about having. Yeah. Because in that case, we're both wrong. I asked you, could you do that with this? You said yes. You couldn't do it. But you didn't know what this was, right? So you found out through that process that it wasn't possible.
Yeah, that's another interesting part is I'm going towards more kind of when we started and me seeing stuff, but you saw all that stuff be done. Right. That's the thing is like a lot of people around here have never seen what this stuff is and let alone how the process, you know, takes place. So like when we were going through the wrap stuff, it's like, I've never seen a car wrap that good. There's certain things that you were demanding that I do. And I'm like, I've personally never seen it. I've never done it myself. So I didn't think it was possible. But then you're like, no, I saw it down in Miami or something like that. And I'm like, well, if it's getting done, then I'm going to figure out how to do it. There's no other way. Mm-hmm. Yep. But it's until like, that's what helps going to SEMA and stuff like that is too, is you see the, you know, potential of products and you can see kind of what can be done and what can be done. And that's tough too, is somebody coming in here and, you know, wanting to work with you, but then not having that vision like you have with the knowledge base behind you of you were in the hot rod stuff, you were in the exotic stuff. So you saw like both, you know, ends of the business. And yeah, that's what's difficult is when you come in here, you have, first of all, no expectations because you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here. But then to be put on a pedestal way up here in terms of your work is, that's what's difficult. And I can see how those people, you know, they're just caring about the money. It's you can't start off a relationship, especially with that new of a business, based around the money. It just doesn't work.
And that's exactly it. Because when I opened it, I had inquiries for jobs that I didn't want to do. Right, like not that there was anything wrong with them; they would have paid money, but they weren't with what my vision was to put out there with my name on it. So it would be just like anything else. We either have to take the check or we have to take the opportunity to say no. And I always say the opportunity to say no is more valuable than that check, because that is an opportunity. Why I say opportunity to say no, that means you put yourself in a position that you're not reliant on doing something that you don't want to do, that may not be your best, that may not be something you're focused on doing. And that's something that I preach to a lot of people, is like, focus on setting yourself up to do the best you can, right? Like, don't just do something to do it. And I think I'd talked to Evan about it when we first got started. I'm like, hey man, I see everything that you've done, right? And I think, if you have some paid gigs and everything like that, that's cool. But what we're doing here is different. We're not chasing a dollar. We're not chasing, clout. We're not chasing, just a perfect picture for a specific single source reason. We're trying to create what I would call personality. That's what I look at it. Like, you single-handedly control our external vision. And so unless somebody walks in this door, they have no clue what this is. So what we put off through the podcast, what we put off through YouTube, Instagram, our pictures at events, we're trying to give somebody insight to us. And that's a lot of trust to give somebody, in Evan's position. Right. And we've went through that with a couple different people and had some bumps, and we've been told we're wrong. We've been told, no, that's not how you do it. We've been told this is stupid, and that's fine. But if you're going to come in here and do this stuff, we have a certain expectation, and we want to work with you on your skills and what's good and what you can provide, and then in turn provide something back to you. And Evan, you've only been with us, since what, the auto show last year?
Yeah, about a
year. And we just got back from SEMA. You guys have obviously seen that, but I do want to say, you've kind of been a good fresh air, a breath of fresh air for us here, because not only are you responsive and quick, but you're also adaptable. The one part I will say is we want to do a little more research on the back end so that we're more properly prepared. But other than that, we couldn't be happier with, what you've done.
I appreciate
so
that.
far. So
Thank you for saying that.
that's one of the things as you're listening to these stories that it goes into why, we want to continue to invest or help you be good at what you do and help you branch out beyond what this is, because it's not all about what goes on here. It's more along like our personal development too, because if you're a good person, you know how to manage, you get better here, you're going to be better out there. Right? I mean, and I think when we talk more about Justin's story and then learning about how Justin and I worked together on the first project and how we had some bumps along the way, and maybe just sharing some honest feedback of your experiences through that, I think a lot of people would really grasp onto that, because it's just a different perspective. And I want you guys to know we're not doing anything filtered. We don't even have notes on here. We have a timer and some pertinent things that we have to do after this, but this is all off the cuff. So, we want to try to be as raw as possible and honest as possible to let people know, really, when you come in the door, you're getting the same exact person you see here. It's not, we're not outside doing donuts and stuff so that we can get the views, and then you come in and we're like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah,
exactly. Good to meet you. But I think today we'll put a pin in Label just getting to the point of, all right, we're going to do this. Okay. We're going to start building the facility, and what does that mean? And what's that look like going ahead from there?
Kind of deep dive into, building the building out and getting the first client through the doors and stuff like that.
Yeah, and letting everybody kind of know what those first few months, first year ended up being like, who we met, some things that had happened, and then lead into a little bit of maybe where you were at that time while I started that off.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of today's episode and learned a little bit about us. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. It means a lot. We hope you'll support and watch the rest of these as we put them out. We're going to kind of bounce back and forth from a little bit of Label history and current events. So our goal is to kind of show you guys a little bit of everything that we're doing, along with giving you some backstory to who Label Motorsports really is. So we'll see you in the next episode.
Peace.